My name is Nancy. I'm 66 years old. Wow. A widow for more than 2 decades. And I live alone in a simple house in Pflugerville, Texas. I spent most of my life sewing, day and night, to raise my only son, Brian. I did everything for him. I gave my time, efforts, my body, my dreams. But tell me something. How does a son get to the point of locking up his own mother without food and going on a trip with his wife as if it were normal? Maybe you're asking yourself the same thing I asked myself during sleepless nights. Where did I go wrong? Is loving too much also a punishment? Because if there's one thing that hurts, it's not physical pain. It is the contempt coming from those you have created with your own hands. I know that many people who have come this far carry a similar pain, a sorrow that no one sees, a silence that screams inside. And if you feel that too, stay with me, because in this story, I'm going to show you how far ingratitude can go, and what happens when a silent old woman decides not to forget. Not everything that dies is buried. Sometimes it is reborn with another force. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know one thing. It was not in a scream that everything collapsed. It was in a phrase said coldly, as if discarding something old. He locked me in that back cabin, turned the key slowly, while the night dance for white called, but the seaweed looked me in the eye and said, "You're going to rot here." Then he got into the car with his wife and drove away. I stayed there. No food, no water, no way to call for help. But what he didn't know, it's just that that cabin carried a secret, something that he himself left there years ago, and that I never had the courage to throw away. Before I continue, I just ask a favor. If this story has already squeezed your heart right from the start, if you've somehow felt this way, left, forgotten, hurt by someone who should love you, then stay with me. Leave a like, subscribe, not as an obligation, but as a gesture of companionship, because telling it hurts. Reliving this memory hurts, but knowing that there are people here with me, sorry, who understand, who feel together, it makes all the difference. Sometimes, all a woman needs is someone who will believe in her, even in silence. I remember well the day I was widowed. It was a morning of closed skies, and the phone rang at 6:17 a.m. I could never hear that ringtone again without feeling my stomach turn. The policeman spoke in a voice too firm for what he was saying. I said that my husband, David, had had an accident on the road. Returning from the night shift, I didn't understand it at first. I stood there, my apron smeared with flour, holding the phone as if I could still change what he had just said. Brian was only 8 years old. He was sleeping, with his feet out of the cover, as he always did. I sat next to him and stared for a while, trying to think of a way to give news that there is no right way to give it. When he woke up, he asked me about his father, And that's when my heart made a noise that no one heard. But it cracked there. From that day on, I became two people, mother and father. He went, town. He worked in an industrial laundry in Round Rock, where he spent the day between heat and steam, folding hospital sheets, scrubbing other people's dirt. At night, I sewed out, took orders for school uniforms, pants hems, graduation dresses. Often, well, I slept with a needle stuck in my finger and thread wrapped around my wrist. Our money was counted penny by penny. We lived in a rented house with old wood and creaking floors, but inside, my God, I taste had love. There was soup on the stove, the smell of clean clothes, and a boy who hugged me saying, "You are my world, Mom." There was a winter when I saved coins for 3 months to buy a waterproof boot for Brian. The other kids had those boots with lights. I couldn't afford it, but I found a good pair, without a brand, in a church thrift store. It cost $26. I was 25. The girl from the store looked me in the eyes and said, "Take it anyway. Merry Christmas." I never forgot that. That year, I myself had dreamed of making a blue dress with puffed sleeves for myself. An old dream, but I sold the fabric I had saved to help buy his gift. I told myself that I would still have time to sew something beautiful for myself. But time, that damn thing, always ran faster than I could keep up. Brian grew up seeing this, seeing how hard I tried. He saw me kneeling on the floor, removing carpet stains with vinegar and baking soda. I saw myself reading supermarket pamphlets as if they were a recipe book. He was not a difficult child. On the contrary, we were very close. We watched the Waltons together on TV, laughed at Mr. Walton's jokes, and cried in secret when a character left. When he went to community college, I almost couldn't fit in with so much pride. It was years of collecting every tax refund, every tip I earned, to pay for his studies. On the day he got the certificate, I prepared fried chicken, mashed corn, just the way he liked it. He came home with the diploma in his hand and hugged me tightly. She said, "Well, then, I did it. Mom, for you." At that moment, not at all. What I did going to what I thought it was all worth it. That every night of bad sleep, every pain in my back, every finger pierced by the needle, it had become a victory for us. You know, there's something we learn after we're old. The love we give is never lost, but sometimes it comes back crooked, and that hurts more than anything. If you've done everything for someone and you've still been pushed aside, he comments below with an "I believe" or "I've lived that," because I know I'm not the only one. Oh, so you have to. Not the only one. And it hurts less when we don't feel alone. I counted the days to see him shine. I dreamed of him being a good man, a good father, a good son. And for a while, I thought everything was right. But time, time has a cruel way of revealing what we don't want to see. What if I told you that the signs of change were already there? But did I choose not to see? When Brian graduated and got that job in Dallas, I cried with joy. I remember it as if it were yesterday. He called me from the company's parking lot. Warren has saved it away. I'm still down. In a euphoric voice, saying, "Oh, Mom, I did it. I start Monday." I felt like the world opened a new door for him. I prepared her favorite dish that night, roast beef with vegetables, and went to sleep with a warm heart. He moved in 2 weeks later. Wow. He rented a small apartment near work. And for a while, then, everything seemed normal. Wow. He called me on Sundays, told me about the office, the projects. I listened to everything carefully, even when I didn't understand anything about engineering. I just wanted to hear your voice. He said he missed me. Wow. That any day he would show up to eat my chili. But this any day was stretched. The frequency of calls began to decrease. First, they went from weekly to bi-weekly. Later, widely, they became short messages. Sometimes, not even that. When he called, "How, you, little down, sit down," he was always in a hurry or with the battery running out. And then came the name I'll never forget. Ashley Nadia. Now to Chowtulin. He told me about her in a quick conversation. Said they were leaving. That she was fun and very intelligent. I smiled. My what? Said I wanted to meet her. But inside, a twinge crossed my chest. Mother feels. We feel when it's losing space. They started dating seriously, and soon they were living together. I sent her a patchwork quilt I made with the cloths left over from other works. She didn't even thank her. Brian just said, "Oh, I think it's done." The first time we saw each other in person was on Thanksgiving. I spent 2 days cooking, preparing everything with care. Nuan. I arrived with the jars, organized, my hands trembling, and an anxious smile. Ashley opened the door. "One Sten." He looked me up and down, gave a short smile, and said, "Hi, Mrs. Well, Nancy. Well, I turned out. Lady, not mother. No, Kyle. Suggestion. Not Mrs. Powell. What else did you? Nancy. Oh, lady, like someone talking to a stranger. Mate. I went in. Went to the kitchen. Now, set the bowl. Down. I took my best turkey, stuffed as he always liked, but no one touched the food. No. Ashley poured an expensive wine and cut a piece of turkey breast just out of politeness. During the meal, I heard her whisper to a friend who was there, "Her food is kinda too simple, right?" And Brian laughed, a muffled and dour, complicit laugh. "Oh, honestly, she must have topped it." When there, I swallowed the dry piece that was in my mouth and went to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror. My lipstick was smudged, my face tired. My heart then felt sick. When I returned to the living room, Ashley was already collecting the dishes without even asking if I wanted to repeat it. The dessert, which was Brian's favorite pudding, was left untouched. I sat there, away, smiling on the outside, aching on the inside. At the end of the night, well, when I said goodbye, sure said goodbye. Brian just said, Leon, thanks for coming, Mom, as if I had made any visit. I drove back home in silence. On the radio, an old song played, but I didn't hear it. My thoughts were far away, trying to understand when, exactly, that bell began to unravel. Why, something there broke, and though I didn't want to admit it, I already knew that this was just the beginning. But what happened next? It was even more cruel. Have you ever felt like a visitor in the life of someone you raised yourself? Because I felt it. That's it. No, I could never forget it. That year, my birthday fell on a Tuesday. I've never been a party woman, but I've always made sure to bake a walnut cake, just like the one Brian liked when he was little. Why? That one, with darker edges and the icing only of confectionery sugar on top. I spent the day cleaning the house, adjusting the couch cushions, setting the table with my small flowered crockery, the ones I only used on special occasions. I also prepared a platter of roast chicken with potatoes and made peach juice, which was his favorite when he was about 12 years old. Wow. I thought they might show up after hours. After all, I had given them advance notice, and Brian always knew that I enjoyed seeing them even for an hour. The clock on the wall was 5 p.m. when I finished arranging everything. I sat on the porch and watched the cars go by. With each light on the street, my heart beat faster, but none of them parked in front of my house. When it was 6:30 p.m., I went in. Wow. Checked my cell phone. No message. I thought, they must be in traffic. I put the dish in the oven to keep warm. Well, at 7:20 p.m., the food was already starting to dry out. The cake was in the center of the table, with a new candle stuck in the middle. Where? Lit. How? The flame trembled slowly. Wow. I looked around. I looked around. Just the noise of the clock and a bark far away. That's when a message arrived. 3 lines. Mom, we forgot. It was a busy day. Sorry. Is that it? No congratulations. No emojis. No calls. I reread that message about 3 times. I didn't cry. Not at the time. I just went to the chair, sat down, cut a slice of the cake, and put it on the flower plate. I sang happy birthday to you softly. The voice failed, and for a moment, I myself didn't know if I was singing for myself or for someone I once was. I ate slowly. The taste was good, the same as in the old days, but inside me, it had turned to dust. After washing the dishes, I packed the rest of the cake into individual pieces, put them in the freezer. I thought maybe they'll come tomorrow, but they didn't come. Not the next day, not the next week. When they called me, It was to ask if I could stop by to drop off some orders from the laundry that Ashley sold online, as if my birthday had never existed. And I kept silent. I didn't charge. I didn't complain. I just shrank inside, day after day, until I fit into a silence that no one else noticed. Sometimes I wondered if this was what happens when we get older. If we disappear little by little, even if we are alive. But that was not the worst yet, because a few weeks later, something came along that made this forgotten cake feel like a gift. And it was at that moment that I began to understand that that son I raised, it no longer existed. Ah, after that forgotten birthday, something inside me began to change. It didn't happen overnight. It was gradually, as if he were no longer smelling his own coffee. Day after day, the love I felt was still there, but there was no place to lean against. Brian no longer looked for me to find out how I was doing. The calls, when they came, always had a practical reason. Mom, can you stop by the house to sign some tax papers? Mom, can you take care of Ruffles this weekend? Let's get away to Houston. Madame Chilcom, Wilson Sidat, Masusto. Ashley's dog was treated like a son. She had an orthopedic bed, a collar with her name embroidered, and a list of care that she left written with a golden pen. I followed everything to the letter. He fed it, took it for a walk, cleaned his paws before entering. Once he vomited on the carpet, and I spent the night scrubbing on my knees with vinegar and a toothbrush, so as not to leave a mark. When I handed it back, Ashley just looked at it and said, "Oh." He seemed a little stressed. I hope it was well taken care of. That hurt more than any slap, but I smiled. And I continued. I began to realize that my presence was only remembered when there was some use. Taking care of the plants while they traveled, to keep some boxes just for a few days that were leaning against my hallway for 6 months. Once, Brian called me in a hurry, saying that he needed me to stay at home to receive a new piece of furniture they bought. There's no way to change the delivery, Mom, and you're always there, right? I was always there, invisible, calm, available, dearly afar, untouched. But what really struck me was the request for money. Ashley called me in the middle of an afternoon. How? Want to talk to you? Want to? Her voice too sweet to be true. He said that they had had an unforeseen event with the car, that they needed $3,000 urgently. I hesitated. No. It was the money I had been saving for 2 years to repair the roof of my house, which was leaking in the living room. She noticed my pause and said, "No, hero. Look, well, give it back as soon as Brian's bonus drops. It's just a loan, okay? Nor will he be missed." And I said, yes. I went to the bank the next day. I withdrew the amount, put it in an envelope, and delivered it to her. She took it like someone who takes any package, stuffed it in her purse, and didn't even look me in the eyes. Brian didn't even thank him. She only said, "Thanks, Mom, you're awesome." And they went back inside the house, laughing at something The months passed. Other trips came. Oh, other photos posted with wide smiles on social networks. Meanwhile, what's the trouble die? And a kleinstunish than Siwan. My roof dripped on top of the armchair in the living room. I put a basin to trim, then another, then a thick cloth. Now, I never saw the money back. Never hear of such a bonus. And that's when it hit me. Really, I was no longer a mother. Counselor, wait, or company. I was a resource, a hanger of favors, a kind of emotional and financial deposit, which they used when they needed it and ignored when it was no longer useful. You know, I'm here, opening my heart, telling my story, without hiding any pain. If you are there, listening, feeling together, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel, because I still have a lot in store to tell you. And, maybe, in some of these memories, you also see yourself a little bit. Mogown. And if you think that was enough to break me, he has not yet seen what came next, because, worst of all, it was yet to happen. And when it happened, it was at a dinner, a simple dinner, but it made me see, for the first time, that my place in their lives had already been decided without me saying a word. It was on a Saturday night in Plano, Texas. Brian and Ashley invited me to dinner at home, a rare thing I hesitated to accept. I confess, I no longer felt comfortable there, but I went anyway. I prepared a corn cake, the one he liked in childhood. Ashley greeted with a polite smile, one of those that we know doesn't last 5 seconds after you turn your back. The house was too tidy, smelling of disinfectant and expensive candles. In the living room, the cushions had their ends up, as if someone had inflated each one with vanity. I sat in the corner chair, where no one sat. We had a tasteless grilled chicken and a salad with a French name. Ashley commented on a new renovation in the house. Brian talked about the work, and I listened in silence. He only opened his mouth when they asked something direct. At one point, I got up to go to the bathroom, and when I passed through the hallway, I heard it. Ashley's voice, low but clear. Well, she should sell that old house and go to an assisted living. It's getting dangerous to live alone at this age. Brian did not immediately respond. And when he answered, "Ben," he only said, "How?" "Yes, maybe it's time to think about it." I stopped there, behind the wall, and then out so. For a few seconds, I didn't even breathe. Then I went to the bathroom, closed the door, and stared at the mirror. I looked at myself as someone who no longer recognizes. What do they see when they look at me? An old woman? A nuisance? A delay in life? I ran my fingers over my face, as if I could erase time with a touch. Will I become a burden? I asked my reflection, but he did not answer. I didn't even need to. When I returned to the living room, Brian changed the subject, and Ashley poured some tea with honey. I pretended I didn't hear anything. But inside me, wow, something collapsed, and it didn't make a sound. I smiled. They thanked him for dinner. Oh, yeah. And drove back to my house slowly, looking in the rearview mirror more than usual. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the damp stained ceiling. I heard the rhythmic drips of the leak, as if time was telling me, they don't want you here anymore. And it was then that I decided that I would never again pretend that I did not hear. But before any attitude, something much worse was yet to come. Because when ingratitude turns into contempt, what comes after can be even more cruel. And I, I had no idea what awaited me. It was on a gray Friday that he appeared. I was on the porch, watering my plants, when I saw Brian's car entering the garage. It had been weeks since he showed up. He hurriedly went downstairs, with the key already swinging in his hand. Mom, I need a quick favor, he said. Mom, what aren't you understand about? With that light tone he used when he wanted to push something. Ashley didn't even get out of the car. She just kept checking her cell phone, as if waiting for a delivery. He explained to me that they were going to travel to Colorado, that they had friends coming to spend a few days at the main house, and that it would be nice if I could stay in the back cabin. Only until Tuesday. No, I was surprised. I had never heard of these friends, but he was quick. It's only for a few days. We leave you there neatly, and then you come back. The cabin in the back was an old room that we used in the past as storage. It had an old mattress, a crooked sink, and a small window with a hole in it. It was no place to stay, but I, silly now, wanted to believe that it was just that. A few days. All right, Brian, I said. That'll bite your stomach. But I need to get my cell phone and my medicines. He made a quick gesture with his hand. Mom, let me get it later. Get in there first, just to see if everything is right. Entered. Loy. The door closed behind me with a bang. The sound of the key turning was dry. What? Cutting. Oh. I turned around. No. Confused. Brian? He was outside. No. With hard eyes. You're going to rot in here, he said. Hey, is that it? And he turned his back. I stood still, feeling a chill rise up my back. I knocked on the door. Carl called, shouted his name. I only heard the sound of the car starting. He didn't have a cell phone. There was no food. There was no water. The walls of the cabin seemed to close around me. I sat on the cement floor, trying to understand. Going over every conversation, every gesture, every silence. Where did this boy become that? What did I create? I got up, went to the window. So calm. I was able to see a piece of the yard. The sky was clear, blue as on good days. But inside me, everything was shadow. I tried to open the window, force the lock, but nothing would budge. It was there, and you alone. Is it once to anyone? Palpitate in that stuffy cubicle that I felt time stop. I can't tell you how many hours passed on the first day. I leaned against the wall, closed my eyes, and tried to remember a happy moment with him. I could remember when he fell off his bike and ran into my lap with his knee scraped. I kissed the wound and he said, "You heal everything, Mommy. Now, undo." He was the one who had torn my heart, and there was no kiss that could fix it. I swallowed my tears as much as I could. But thirst came before tears. The throat began to dry out. The tongue felt like it was made of dust. I remembered the glass jar that was in the corner of the cabin, where I used to keep nails. I ran there. It was empty. I looked around. Nothing. Just an old bucket with a hole in the bottom. I sat down again, and that's when I thought, he left me here to disappear. If you've come this far with me, stay a little longer. I do have, because, as hard as it may seem, the most remarkable moment in this story is yet to come, and it starts right here, on this dirty floor, on this silence. The next morning, the light came in cutting through the window. I felt weak, nauseous, dizzy. His head throbbed, and then, how? Out of nowhere, something came to mind. One detail, an oblivion of him, something he ignored, but that I had never forgotten. And that's what lit a spark inside me, because that cabin, it kept more than cobwebs. She kept a secret that could change everything. But would I be able to use it in time? I knocked on that door with all the strength I had. And look, nor was it much. My arms can't take it like they used to. But I did. I hit like someone trying to wake up from a nightmare. Then I screamed, "Brian, open it. For God's sake, Brian." No response, just the echo of my own voice coming back to me. The window? Locked with a piece of wood inside. Not even with an iron bar could I open that. The sun was already beginning to change place in the sky. The shadows grew, and with them, the fear inside my chest as well. That's when I remembered something. Near the town, many years ago, I had put a bottle of water in a compartment behind the closet, one of those old habits of a mother who always wants to be prepared. I went there, pushing the heavy wood with my shoulder, and found it. My eyes watered even before my mouth. It was a plastic bottle, covered in dust, half full. Trembling, I brought it to my lips and drank like someone who drinks hope. It tasted bad, but it saved my soul. Time went by, and when the cold began to enter through the cracks, I crawled to the corner where there was an old blanket. It reeked of mold and abandonment, but I covered myself anyway. Shrunken, no. I repeated to myself, no. It's coming back. It is coming back. I'll be back. In the beginning, it was like a mantra, something I wanted to believe in. But after a few hours, the sound of my own voice began to sound like a lie, and the his coming back became a why did he do this to me? Really, in that icy corner, My mind went back in time without me being able to stop it. I saw myself bathing him in a blue bucket when he was a baby, singing that little invented song that only he knew. Oh, I found myself bandaging my injured knee after a fall and taping his drawings to the fridge, even crooked, even stained. I remembered the day he had a high fever, and I spent the night awake with a wet towel on his forehead, asking God not to let my boy go. And now, how did the old night down? And now, he had left me, locked, me, alone. Ha! No food, no news. It was at that moment that the pain became something different, deeper, no, quieter. One of these. It was no longer just sadness. It was something that has no name. I looked around the cabin, trying to find some trace of humanity, but everything seemed cold, abandoned. How? Like me. And you know what's crueler? We spend our whole lives trying to teach our children what is right, thinking that it is enough to love a lot for them to grow up good. But no one talks about the time when love comes back on their backs. If you've ever felt this, if you've ever trusted too much and been left behind, comment below. Right, I know how it is. Or I understand you. Understand. Just so I know that I'm not talking to myself. That there are people on the other side who have also felt this emptiness. On the second night, I started hearing sounds. I don't know if it was on the outside or something in my head. Sometimes it felt like a step, sometimes a distant whistle. But no one came. Nobody knocked, and hunger began to mix with fear. My body hurt, my mouth was dry, and my hope almost gone. But then, on the third day, something inside that cabin changed. One detail, a sign, something forgotten for many years. And it was this detail that made me get up, even with a weak body, because maybe there was the key to turn everything around. And you won't believe what I found. It was already halfway through the third day. The sun came in weakly through the crack in the window, and I didn't even know if it was morning or afternoon. My body was light, so weak. My throat felt like it was made of sand. My knees could no longer support me without pain. I was slowly fading away, but my head was still working. It was then that a memory crossed me, as if someone had whispered in my ear, "Remember what your father taught you." Nancy, one, my father, a war veteran, Mom, always said, "No, never trust anyone too much. Always have an output, even if you never have to use it." He had secretly built a small compartment inside the closet of the cabin. In the 70s, when that land still belonged to his family, a kind of false bottom, behind a worn wooden wall, where I kept tools, and later, an old cell phone that I hid there, just in case. A flip phone, from those old ones. I still remember when I bought it. It was prepaid. I only used it for emergencies, and I put it there, thinking I would never need it. I crawled to the closet, my legs shaking. I used the foot of a chair to force the wooden panel, and when it came loose, My heart almost stopped. He was there, covered in dust, with the battery swollen, where, but whole, trembling, no. I pressed the side button. The screen lit up. Oh, weak, where, but lit up. A clicking noise, and there it was, working. I looked at the few contacts that still existed on the device. My son, Nye, of course, Lee was the first, but the second, it was Judith, my neighbor, retired, widowed, like me, who lived 2 houses next door. We have always been friends on the balcony, those who exchange a slice of pie and a cup of borrowed sugar. The only person who never turned his back on me. I wrote a short message. Judith, I'm locked in the cabin. I die. Help me. Don't tell anyone. It comes alone. And I did. Then the cell phone went out. Dead battery. But hope had already come back to live in me. Wow. It was an anxious wait, mixed with fear. Every twig noise outside made me hold my breath. And then, almost 2 hours later, I heard firm footsteps. Judith's voice calling me softly. Wow. Nancy, are you in there? I almost collapsed. I told her everything quickly, and she managed to break down the door with the help of an old spare key that she still had kept from the time she was gardening. When the door opened, the light hit me like a slap, and Judith hugged me tightly, and in that hug, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Security. Oh, my God. Nancy, what they did to you was a crime. She said, how? Looking around with her eyes watering. I took a deep breath, and I could only say, I saw it all, Judith, and I haven't forgotten anything. She took me to her house. He gave me sugar water. Now, sit in how? Old Seward stubborn and stabbed so. A warm shower and a clean blanket. I lay down on the guest bed and stood there in silence while she watched me from the side. Then, Akobus, asking no questions, she knew, I knew that this story was not over yet. And there, lying there, looking at the flowery ceiling of Judith's house, I began to think differently. Something inside me changed. It wasn't anger. It was not a desire for revenge. It was a clarity I had never felt. Because now, I had seen who my son really was, and he had survived to tell it. But did he imagine I was alive? That I had escaped? And what did he do when he came back to find the hut empty? Oh, country, indemnity, in cell bill die. This you will find out now, because the tables have started to turn, and I learned to play in silence. I returned to my house a week later, accompanied by Judith, who did not leave me alone for a minute. Before entering, stairs I tried to see you. I stopped at the front door and took a deep breath. It was the first time I had crossed that threshold with a different heart. It was no longer the mother's heart that she was expecting. It was that of the woman who survived. Judith still insisted, Nancy, no, you need to call the police. That's what he did. Ah, that was kidnapping. I looked at her and just replied, "Well, no. Judith, when, nah. Who does this to her own mother? No, Virgestem Kakan, Kadalisifon. He deserves something colder than jail. He deserves to live by his own name." She didn't understand right away, but she didn't argue. I knew I wasn't the same anymore. In the days that followed, loud, I plunged into my silence as if dressing in mourning. But it was not a mourning of death, it was of lucidity. For the first time in my life, I stopped trying to understand Brian. I stopped justifying his attitudes, looking for blame in myself, and I started to act. I woke up early, as I always did. I prepared my coffee, my toast, and sat at the table with my hardcover notebook. There, way sundown, between recipes and old bills, I began to organize what was still mine. I went to the city and made an appointment with Mr. R. Shounds Whitman. Nay, Whitman, a lawyer I met years ago when I needed to regularize some house papers. He recognized me immediately, and when we sat down, he asked me how he could help. "I want to rearrange my will," I said. "How?" Looking him straight in the eye. "And I also need to talk about my house, my possessions, and some receipts that I have kept." I spent hours sorting through old papers, receipts of donations, Wayananatan, transfers ID made to Brian over the years, all stored in envelopes stained by time, mile. But there was proof of how much I gave during this phase. My house changed. The front door, which used to be leaning against it, now only opened with the key that I myself carried in my pocket. I closed all the windows with new locks, had the lock on the gate changed, and took out Brian's name as an emergency contact at the pharmacy, at the medical center, Mom, in everything, in the kitchen, Han. I went back to sewing. The threads passed firmly through the needle, and each stitch I gave was as if it were a piece of me coming back to life. I cooked just for myself. He ate slowly. Oh, I cleaned everything up later. And he slept with a lighter soul, because now I didn't expect any more visitors. How? It's funny how sometimes we only start to really live when we stop asking to be loved. And if this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, help me carry it forward. Like and subscribe here to the channel. This makes more difference than you might think. The next week, Brian tried to call me. I let it play. Then she sent a message. "Hi, Mom. Mom, I returned from a trip. Is everything okay?" I did, but I didn't answer. Then the next day, well, he showed up at the gate. He rang the bell, clapped his hands. I looked out the window. But I didn't go there. He insisted. "Well, Mom, are you there? We brought a gift." It was Ashley's voice in the background. Volume? Like someone trying to put out a fire with perfume. But I didn't want more gifts. He wanted distance. And that's when they started to feel it. Silence. But what they didn't know was that my silence was not empty. It was full of plans, and the biggest of them was about to be executed. Because when they found out what I had done with the will, then they would understand that not all change comes with shouting. Some come with signed paper and a stamp at the end. But before that, he still had one last visit to make, a visit that would change the course of everything. And this visit was scheduled for the next morning. Minister, do you know why? Because justice, when it comes softly, it is usually the one that lasts the longest. The next morning, I put on my blue button-down blouse and went to the mirror. I looked at myself calmly. His face was thinner, his eyes deeper, but there was something there that I hadn't seen in a long time. Firmness. I grabbed my leather bag, the one I kept for serious occasions, and walked to the bus stop around the corner. It was still early. The sky of Pflugerville had that orange hue that only appears when the day is still learning to rise. I got off at Round Rock, near Main Street, on my own, and I'll be here at Thomas Trusted Joe, and walked to Mr. Whitman's office. The building was old, blacked out brick, with a smell of old paper mixed with fresh coffee. When I entered, he greeted me with a discreet smile. "Did you bring the documents?" he asked. I took out of my bag a plastic folder with my papers, everything in there, copies of bank deposits, transfer records, proof of loans, dates, amounts, all in fine print. No, with notes in the corner, every favor that turned into a wound. He analyzed it calmly. "Mom, do you really want to go through with this?" I nodded. "I want to, but in silence." So he typed, printed, stapled, now, one empty seal, stamped. That's when he looked at me over his glasses and said, now let's go to the will. There, one legend serum, Akaboraka. At that moment, I wrote my last line of donation. But it wasn't for Brian. Not a penny. The house, the land where I grew up, the savings of a life, sewing until dawn. I left everything to Judith, the only one that came. How? The only one that took me off the ground when no one else could see. I have included firm clauses with precise legal language which prevent any future challenge. Mr. Cobb Whitman even commented, "This is going to surprise a lot of people." And I just replied, "Wad destorab, when town seal or him sush, what up to?" Yes, but time knows what it does. Before leaving, hello, I registered something else. A complete testimonial. An account written in my own words, detailing the days in the cabin, the date, the condition, the sentence he said to me, every detail. I signed at the end. Witnessed. Official. I left the office and walked slowly to the corner cafe. I ordered a hot tea and sat looking out the window. I saw families passing by, children running, a girl pushing a baby stroller. Carol Winston Arzisto? And I thought, knew. How do we raise someone with so much love, and yet he becomes something else? If you've been following me here, listen to what I'm going to tell you now. Now, there are all stories that we keep quiet for years, and we think that no one will understand. But sometimes telling this story is the only way to break free from it. And what's next? It's the part that moves me the most, because there are things that not even pain can erase. That afternoon, I returned home with a light heart. I slept like I hadn't slept in a long time. And in the days that followed, I continued my silence. Brian texted, Leo, and Stelcio Beno, untexted, left messages. Mom, is everything okay? Why did it disappear? Ashley wants to see you. I read, and erased. They didn't know what I had done. They didn't imagine that the woman they locked up now had something much stronger than screaming. She had proof, but I knew that at some point, they would come back. And when they returned, they would not find the same Nancy. They would find another, one that, in silence, had already won. And that time was closer than they could have imagined, because Ashley's birthday was approaching. Oh, and with him, the invitation came. And you have no idea what happened at that party. It was on any given afternoon, one of those when the wind hits the curtains, and we only hear the noise of our own thoughts. I was rearranging some old papers in a box that was under the bed, one of those boxes that we push to the bottom as the years go by, but that we never have the courage to throw away. I started with old receipts, house contracts, letters I exchanged with the insurance company when Brian's father died. And it was there. I'm a force there. Between two yellowed envelopes. Then I found a bank statement with my name on it. At first, I thought it was just another expired roll, but something about him caught my attention. The name Brian T. Callahan appeared there as a co-title holder. I frowned. I have never opened a joint account with anyone, and when I looked closer, I saw the dates and the amounts. Transfers made between 2021 and 2022. Silent. Almost imperceptible. One of 1800, another of 2,200, 3,000 more in a single withdrawal. And so it went, until it added up to more than $12,000. 12,000, from my name, from my investment account, straight to an account in his name. I went to the bank the next day. I showed the statement and asked for clarification. The attendant pulled the records, confirmed the movement. But this account is linked to your CPF with authorization from a co-holder. She said, I trembled inside. I asked for a certified copy of the statements and left there with soft knees. At home, I sat in my rocking chair, took a deep breath, and grabbed my green-covered notebook, the one where I write down my outbursts. I wrote slowly, He robbed me twice, in my pocket and in my heart. It was there, with the pen still in my hand, that I realized something painful. Sometimes What hurts the most is not what they take from us, but what they dismantle inside. The image you had of the person, the story you believed you lived together. I found myself remembering the day I bought my first savings CD. Back in 1986, me and Brian's dad standing in line at a bank in downtown Austin, with the sun beating down on our faces. It's for our boy's future, he said. Now, I'm gonna do now. Wish I'd cut that. Our staging stuff to COVID Bob. And we left there, thinking we were doing the right thing. Funny how certain memories stick to us. These are small details, but they mark more than any wound. And I would like, if you are listening to me on the other side, what for the North down, not to tell me too. Do you have any memories like that? The kind that stays with you forever? No, even when everything else has changed. If you do, write here in the comments. It can be a now. I went through this. I remembered it now. Or even my mother also experienced something like this. I'm going to read it. Well, still, our cactus is sucked, and I'm going to keep it with affection. After that day, nothing in me was doubtful. Now, it was certain. Sure he didn't stumble. And it was what good job. He chose to take away, lie, get in, hide. I put the papers in a new envelope, wrote with red pen, proofs, and I put them next to the documents in the back of the closet, right between my father's Bible and the box with my wedding letters, because there are things that we need to keep with real weight. But there was still a piece missing from this puzzle, something I felt, but I couldn't prove it. A loose end. And the name of that cameo was Ashley, and it was in an unpretentious conversation. A week later, that a neighbor said something that would change everything, because the mask was about to fall. I woke up that Monday with a calm heart. I had dreamed of Brian's father, a rare thing. He looked at me from the other side of the fence, without saying a word, but with that look that said, "Go, Nancy, you know what you have to do." I got up from the bed with a firmness that I found strange myself. I put on my beige cotton outfit, flat shoes, and drank my coffee in silence. Judith already knew what was going to happen. She looked at me with only her eyes and said, "Are you ready?" I replied, "Nice. I was born ready. Nice. I just lacked courage." I called Brian shortly after 9. He answered with that tight voice of someone who knows he owes but doesn't want to pay. "Hi, Yin. Mom," I said directly. "Moo. I need to go to the doctor today. It's important. Can you take me?" It took a few seconds. He said, "Okay. What time?" We scheduled it for early afternoon. He arrived by car, without getting off, just honking. I got in, sat in the passenger seat with the briefcase on my lap. He didn't even ask what I had. He only commented, impatiently, "How? You should use the city plan. There is transportation for the elderly." On the way, I kept quiet. I looked out the window. The trees passed quickly, and I thought about everything I carried on that lap. every sheet of paper, every written line, well, per line, every stamp. It was as if I had my story there, in the form of justice. We arrived at the office of Dr. Jenkins, well, a clinician who had been seeing me for years, and who knew much more than my exams. He smiled when he saw me. Nancy, come in. Let's talk. I entered slowly, one down, nothing on that. With the briefcase in my hand, I sat on the chair and asked, "Well, doctor, can you call my son in too? I think it would be important for him to listen." The doctor was surprised, but nodded. Brian came in with that way of someone who doesn't want to be there. He looked at the clock, then at me. "What's up? What do you have?" "Doctor, wow." Jenkins took a breath and, with a steady look, said, "Brian, your mom is fine. Very well. Now, Deacon, by the way, the exams are perfect." Brian made a point of getting up. "Then why all the drama?" That's when I put the folder on the table and pushed slowly in the direction of the doctor. "Because there's something you need to hear and see." Dr. Jenkins opened the folder. And calmly began to read. First, the bank statements, then the records of the hospital where I was treated after leaving the cabin, with notes about dehydration and stress. Then the New Testament, with the names, clauses, seals, and the statement I signed before the lawyer and witnesses. Brian turned pale. He didn't say a word. I only heard the leaves turn, until the doctor stopped, took off his glasses and said, "Brian, what did your mother go through here?" "It was abandonment. This is too serious. She almost died." Silence spread across the room like a mute earthquake. Brian stammered, "No, Mom, Mom, but I got up, steadfast, without raising your voice. I looked him in the eye and just said, 'Now, you know I've seen it all.' He tried to explain himself, said that they had misunderstood, that everything was exaggerated. No, but Dr. Jenkins just put his hand on the documents and replied, 'This right here, it is not an exaggeration. It's survival.'" Brian sat there, his hands trembling, not knowing whether to close his mouth or his eyes. I left the room without saying anything else. The weight I had carried for months seemed to evaporate in the air of that reception. Judith was waiting for me outside. When he saw me, he opened the car door slowly. And I entered with the peace of someone who, for the first time, was heard. But what neither Brian nor Ashley knew, that dossier still had one more destination, one they would never have expected, and who would deliver. It wouldn't be me. Can you imagine who it was? Well, to this day they also don't know how it happened. But it happened. And it changed everything. The week after the meeting in the office, I sat at the living room table with a manila envelope in front of me. I put on my glasses, took a deep breath, and wrote the shortest and hardest letter of my life. I didn't use adjectives, nor regret, nor anger. I'll come. Won't you? Only truths. Brian, as of this date, I communicate that I am definitively ending any financial and emotional ties with you. I don't want visits, phone calls, or messages. Any attempt to contact me will be considered a violation of my personal decision and registered as psychological and property abuse. I attach copies of the updated will and the official testimony of what happened. Notarized signature. Moi. I signed my name calmly, like someone who plants a tree and knows that it will grow. I closed the envelope, countdown, went to the post office and sent it as a registered mail. On the way back, I stopped at the pharmacy and changed my phone. I bought a new device, prepaid, an unprecedented number. At home, now, I changed the bank passwords, cancelled my old card, and had a new lock installed on the front door. In the garage, I left the car with the key in the contact. Judith placed an ad on Craigslist, and 2 days later, a nice gentleman from Temple came to pick it up. Well, why are you selling? He asked. I smiled and replied, "Oh, because there are things in life that we need to let go before it takes us." Judith came to live with me the same week. He brought his little plants, his mystery books, and his electric kettle. She slept in Brian's old room, now with light walls and new curtains. At night, we had tea on the porch, listened to the crickets, and talked about life. It was simple, but it was light. For the first time in many years, I slept with the door locked, inside, and my heart too. There was a moment, now, on the third day, when I woke up in the middle of the night. I thought I heard footsteps in the hallway. My body froze, but then I remembered. Now, oh, then Sarah, Hector. Only those who want to enter can enter. I got up, went to the kitchen, had a glass of water looking at the clock. Only 2:46 in the morning. Now 2:26 in the morning. The silence was so deep that I could hear the sound of my own body existing. Brian tried to call dozens of times. The old number still worked in the records. I saw the missed calls on a device that Judith kept off and hidden inside a drawer. "Do you want to hear the audios?" she asked. I said no, because if there's one thing I've learned, no one does it. It's just that some voices, when they lie too much, lose the music. And it was there, boss, at that stage of my life when pain already had a name and freedom already had color, that I felt whole, not because he won, but for having rescued me. Wow, but no, you see, life is sometimes capricious. When we think everything is solved, what? I'm talking. A last curve comes, one last surprise, and this arrived on a Thursday morning. An unexpected envelope, a name I hadn't read in decades, and a revelation that no lawyer, no will, no silence could predict. Do you think you've seen it all? Wait until you know who sent that letter. He came as someone who expects nothing. A clear morning, without haste. The mail arrived with that usual slow pace. Judith opened the box. sorted out the usual letters, electric bills, market flyers, a letterhead envelope from a law firm, but it was her cell phone that rang first. It was Brian. She looked at me. I shook my head. She answered with the calm of someone who had already learned not to tremble before his name. She's not going to answer, Brian. And no, she doesn't want to talk. He hung up. No. 15 minutes later, I was at the door. Judith looked out the window and asked me, "Yeah, do you want me to say it's not?" I took a deep breath. None you say I am, but it's too late. She opened only the glass of the small side window. She's here. Yes, but he doesn't want to see you. And I suggest you leave before the neighbors hear what you yelled at her that day. But he didn't go. Well, there, Aunt Tasha, or don't see ensued. He stood there in front of the gate, first begging, then arguing with the air. He would yell things like, "You took it too far." "Oh, that's this." It was just a joke. Never. I was stressed. Ashley suggested it. His voice oscillated between despair and guilt, as if trying to cling to any version that saves him. The next afternoon, flowers arrived, a bouquet of white roses with a card that read, "Forgive me, Mom. I'm still your son." I know him. Judith put the flowers in a vase and left it outside. No, on the ground. No. It rained at night. The petals dawned withered. When dark, then came the gifts, a new electric coffee maker, expensive perfumes, a cashmere blanket, all wrapped up with empty tickets. I didn't open any. Judith kept the boxes in a corner of the attic, in case Justice ever needs proof of manipulation. As she put it, he sent an email too. Long, high, full of crooked phrases, like I was too young. "You always charge me too much." Ashley pressured me. No, where? But he also said, "And I love you, Mom." Loose words, without roots, because real love, it doesn't come after the damage. It comes earlier, at the right time, when you can still hold someone's hand and prevent the fall. Ashley disappeared. Neighbor sources said she quit her job in Dallas, deleted social media, and went to California to live with a cousin. He left Brian alone. And that's when it started to collapse for good. Judith said that one night he stood for almost an hour in the car, in front of our house, just looking. He didn't blow the horn. When I stepped to, he didn't. It didn't come out. He did not send a message. It just stayed there. We turned off the lights and waited in silence. He doesn't want to see you. He wants you to see him broken. Judith whispered, and maybe she was right, because a man like Brian, well, he can't stand his own reflection when he no longer has an audience. There are things that we live and keep, but maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. Like this video, and sign up. And let's make this story reach those who need it, because a lot of people out there think that silence is weakness, and he does not know that it is, in fact, the place where the strongest decisions are born. Well, And I, at that time, had already done mine. I was no longer going to protect anyone from their own choices, nor to hide what he did. But what he didn't know yet, it was that the world listens, even when we only whisper, Lutana Aldo Wajo. And what Judith did days later, how, was what changed everything. Because sometimes justice comes in the mouth of those we least expect. And what she said, he made everyone shut up. I have always believed that time is the only judge who does not need to raise his voice to give a sentence. And he didn't fail me. After Judith, with that courage that only those who have lived through a lot have, discreetly shared our story with a legal assistant from the community. Everything began to move at a pace that was not mine. It was the truth. The complaint was made with discretion, but with all the evidence in the right hands. The account statement, the bank records, the medical statements, the copy of the will, even the message history and the notes that Brian left afterwards. Everything there. The lawsuit was filed for misappropriation and financial abuse against the elderly. I didn't ask for jail. No. I never did. I asked him for what was rightfully mine. One, this, that he return part of what he took, with a fine nominal, and that the system knew what he did. When the summons reached him, Judith saw the exact moment through the window. The postman handing over the thick envelope. He opened it in a hurry, reading, standing in the middle of the garden. Then lowering his head. Pow! As if the very weight of the words crushed him inside. Well, and what came next? Down. It was like a wave. The construction company where he worked found out. It seems that someone, and I don't know who, sent copies of the complaint and the local reports that came out. Brian was removed indefinitely, and when he sought credit to cover the fine, he found that his reputation was already tarnished in the city's banks. But what hurt him the most, I think, was the street, the neighborhood. Because when he started to be ignored in bakeries, at condominium meetings, at a friend's son's school parties, he understood that it was not only on paper that he had lost. It was respectful. In the neighborhood's Facebook group, comments began to pop up. Is it true that he was the one who locked his own mother in the cabin? Guys, what kind of man does that to the woman who raised him alone? God forbid I raise a child and end up like this. I didn't answer any. Neither did Judith. But justice was already done. And it did not come from the scandal. It came from the silence of those who watch someone fall and don't need to push. With the part of the value I recovered, I did something that had been maturing in my heart. I visited Yelener House, a reception center for elderly women who have been abandoned by their families. Women who, like me, gave everything and then were left with nothing. I talked to the director. I saw the simple rooms, the faces full of stories. I left there a donation large enough to renovate 2 rooms and maintain the center for more than 6 months. I just asked them to put a small sign on the wall of the hallway for all who loved too much and were forgotten. At this point in life, we no longer seek to win. We look for meaning, and donating what they took from me was my way of saying, still here? How? No. Sometimes I think that everything I lived with Brian was to teach me one thing, that the greatest victory is not to become like the one who hurt you. And if you have come this far with me, no, I ask you, continue. Because what happened the following week? It was so unexpected. So out of everything I could have predicted, that to this day I wonder if that was punishment or redemption. Have you ever received a letter that changes everything you thought about someone? Well, then, just wait until I tell you what was inside that blue envelope. That week, winter arrived early in Pflugerville. The mornings were covered by a thin fog, and the wind blew as if wanting to erase the trail of unresolved things. Judith prepared apple tea with cinnamon, and I, sitting with my box of fabrics on my lap, went back to sewing. Small nail pen was in texture, but I see her. Simple, well, lovingly made clothes, children's coats for a shelter in the area. My fingers, calloused, still knew the path of the thread through the needle, and it warmed me inside more than any fireplace. That same week, the news arrived. Brian had sold the car, this Ashton, a red Mustang that he always made a point of showing off, as if it were an extension of his own pride. He sold it to cover part of the fines, pay a lawyer, and, perhaps, ease the weight of shame. The job had already been lost. Ashley, missing since the story broke, sent the divorce papers. He was left alone. In a small rented apartment in the old part of Plano, with windows without curtains and too much echo in the rooms. Friends who used to celebrate his barbecues and trips now crossed the street not to find him. He became that kind of man who is only mentioned with a sigh of lament. He was so promising. On Christmas Eve, as Judith and I packed the clothes we sewed for donation, the phone rang. Judith looked at the display and recognized the number. He stared at me in silence, waiting for my signal. I nodded. She answered. Now busted you, and we're still not started. Orchard Shelby Cats. Hello? On the other side, now, his voice trembling, almost a whisper. Judith, no. Is she there? She did not respond immediately. He went to the window, looked at me, folding a blue jacket, then replied firmly. She spent the day sewing clothes for donation. She's busy with those who really matter. Not so now. She hung up. He said nothing more. I didn't ask either. I just kept sewing. When I finished the last piece, I went to the window. Lifted a corner of the curtain, and saw he was standing across the street. He didn't ring the bell. Now I'm walking so Kyle. I was alone, looking, no, not angry, nor with arrogance, no, but with that expression of someone who finally understands. I closed the curtain slowly. I walked over to the couch, sat down with my box of letters on my lap, and picked up the pen. I wrote one more, addressed to a lady from Arkansas, whom Judith met in an online forum to support elderly women abandoned by their children. Dear Mabel, now Tarsihound. I know what it's like to expect too much from those who don't know how to give even the minimum. But you're not alone. Hey, I also thought I couldn't take it, but I held on. And today I write to you with a free heart. No, when we stop begging for love and start distributing dignity, life changes color. But do you think it's over? No, not yet. Because what happened on New Year's Eve, it was something that not even I, with all my life experience, could predict. An unexpected visit, an envelope in his hands, and one last sentence. That even moved Judith. And look, what to make that woman tremble. It's not easy. New Year's Eve arrived without fireworks, without champagne. Da semsichi top arsenes, without a plentiful table. Judith made a hot soup. We lit a lavender-scented candle and put on old Nat King Cole record to play softly. The house was at peace. For the first time in many years, I took a deep breath and felt that I was alive in its entirety, not out of obligation, not out of duty, but by choice. Age. It's a process that no one explains properly. They say that we are becoming more fragile, more forgotten, slower. But do you know what I discovered? That old age is also the time when everything that was a lie falls to the ground. Time does not heal. He reveals. And when we decide to stop plugging the hole of affection with silence, it shows exactly who is who. I spent years trying to deserve a love that, in fact, I had already given too much. And in the end, I was not the one who had to prove anything. I just needed to remember who I was before I was Brian's mother, before being the woman who sues, who keeps food in the freezer waiting for a visit, who accepts to be used and then apologizes with a smile. No, I don't feel hatred. This ages the soul more than time. But I don't feel sorry for myself either. No, John. I feel sorry for him because he lost the only person who still believed in what he could be. And now he will have to live with what he really was. There are nights when I sit on the porch, look at the Texas sky very dark and wide. Judith puts 2 cups of tea on the table, one for me, one for her, and we stand there in silence. Sometimes she asks if I regret it, and I always answer the same thing. I'm not a saint. I just decided not to die on my knees. Everything I did, every document signed, every word silenced, every step I took away from him was to remind me that my life has value. Not for what I did for anyone, but for what I decided to do for myself. Today I cook only for those who respect me. I only sew pieces that warm someone who needs it. I sleep with the doors locked from the inside, not out of fear, but because now whoever enters here enters because I want to. And you know the most curious? Even after all, there is a place inside me that still wonders. Will he ever? When? Choncha, will you understand? Because in that envelope he left here on New Year's Eve, next to an old photo of us, he was small, with dirty feet. Sitting on my lap, there was a letter. A short letter, and at the end of it, a sentence that Judith read aloud with a trembling hand. Oh, but what he wrote there? Nay, I still don't know if it was true, or if it was another attempt to return. Do you want to know what was written? So get ready, because what came after that sentence, it changed everything I thought I had closed forever. That spring morning was different. The sun touched the garden gently, as if asking permission to warm my skin. Judith helped me dig the hole in the front lawn. Her hands, strong and firm, held the stem of the small tree I chose so carefully. A white magnolia, one of those that blooms even after the harshest winters. I buried the roots with affection, as if keeping a promise in the earth. Then I put up a small wooden sign with simple letters. Here, silence blooms. Judith looked at me and asked softly, "Undell, do you want to leave a message for him?" I smiled unhurriedly. He has already received the answer, in the form that hurts the most. Forgetfulness. It was not revenge. It was relief. Brian, it disappeared from my heart, like an echo that does not find a wall to come back to. Not because I stopped loving, but because I finally loved myself enough not to beg for love back. Today, I live peacefully. Judith lives with me. Our afternoons are filled with seams, stories, and restrained laughter. Sometimes, neighbors pass by and wave. Some younger ladies ask me for advice. And I, who have been silenced so many times, learned to speak in a way that doesn't need a shout to have strength. What life has taught me, it's just that love is not proven by humbling itself, and that when someone steps on your heart, you don't have to fight back with pain, but with absence, because the emptiness you leave is what weighs the most. I'm not perfect, but I was whole, and no one can take that away. Now, we are born learning to take care of others, but there comes a time when we need to remember to take care of ourselves, too. I want to thank, from my heart, you who have listened to me so far. I know. It's as if we were sitting together on this balcony, sharing hot tea and difficult memories. If this story touched you in any way, leave a like. For me, it's like a tight hug. And if you want to come back for another coffee full of life, subscribe to the channel. When they might would not see a seashell. Thus, we build a beautiful community of people who feel, who listen, who understand. How? Tell me in the comments of which city you are listening to me. I like to imagine where my words are going, and it activates the bell. Okay? That way you don't lose when the coffee's brewed again. And before leaving, listen to my advice. Don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story. And each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.